Hello YouTube, you might be having pressure problems and you have a well, or you just want to check it and make sure it's set up correctly, and all of that is okay to do. But before you break out that screwdriver and mess up your entire system, the first thing you are supposed to do is to check the pressure on your well holding tank, or pressure tank as it's called, and I'm going to show you how to do that in today's video. It's easy, quick, and it's a good thing to do. So let's get started. First thing we've got to do is shut the electricity off to the well pump. So now that the power's off, we've got to drain all the water from this pressure tank right here. And we'll know when all the water's drained out because this gauge here is going to read 0. And you can see right now it's right about 50 psi. So let's get this water drained and I'll show you how to do it. All you're going to typically need in most well setups is a garden hose. And you need to attach it to a drain spigot like I've got right here. And in most setups you're going to have this. If you don't, you may have to do this another way, but this is very common, so this is likely what you're going to see. So I'm going to tighten that up, and I'm going to run the other end of this hose outside. Before I open this valve up to drain it, is in my house I've got an extra shutoff here, and the reason that's beneficial to close if you've got it is because once you drain this, air is going to get in the system, and if you shut off the water to the rest of your house, the benefit is when we fill this back up with water, there won't be nearly as much air, so you won't get all that banging in the pipe. But if you don't have a shutoff, it's not the end of the world, but you really want to see if you do because it's going to make this much easier, and you won't have to drain out kind of all the water in your pipes. So close that valve if you've got it. One other added benefit of checking the pressure in your tank is that when you drain the water out, you're actually going to drain out some sediment, maybe some iron buildup and stuff like that at the bottom of the tank. And that doesn't always come out when you normally just use your house water. So it's actually beneficial to do this as well. And there's never harm in checking the pressure of the tank like I'm going to show you. So let's crack this valve open. Doesn't really matter if you go slow or fast. You'll hear the water coming out. So as the water's draining out, you're going to notice that the pressure on the gauge is going to go down. And the way these work, it's going to go very, very slowly, and then the gauge is just going to suddenly drop. And that's just the way the pressure works on these. And as you can see, now we're at 0, so all the water's out of the tank. So just a quick recap here. So we've got the pressure in the tank at 0, which means there's no more water in the tank. Over here, this valve, we have our house water shut off, which means that no water from the house is going to leak back into the tank. And we've still got our hose connected, and this drain valve is still open. So now we're ready to do the one simple procedure, which is to check the pressure in this blue holding tank right here. So now what we need to do is take a look at the top of the tank. And as we scroll up here, we're going to notice that you've got a couple of caps here. You've got this one right on the top in the center. And then the one you're interested in is this smaller one right here. And if we go ahead and we unscrew this, you should just be able to do it with your hand. It might be stuck a little bit. Take this off. In my case, I'm using the separate gauge, but all that means is that I clamp this on. And you're going to hear some air, and you want to make sure that gives a good tight seal like that. And now let's take a look at our reading. So let's see. So now that we know that my pressure is 38 psi and that my cut-in pressure is 40, what does that mean? So if your reading comes down to 20 or to 10, that's at least a good sign because you have some air in the tank, but it needs to be adjusted because that's more than likely too low. So you are going to have to determine what your cut-in pressure is supposed to be, but a safe bet is that at a minimum, you should have 30 psi in the tank, or at a maximum in most cases in the United States, you should have 38 psi. So I do suggest trying to figure out what your cut-in pressure is set to, whether it's 40 or 30, but in practical use, if you put this gauge and do this test that I'm showing you, and you have less than 30, you want to add air until you either get to about 28 psi or in my case 38 psi. So the real short version of this is, in most places in the United States, when you do this test, your gauge is either should read 38 psi or 28. If it's much less than that, you should add some air to bring it up. The closer you get to the correct reading, the better it is. So even if you're a little under, it's okay, and you really do not want to be over. So if you do need to add air to this, what you do is you connect a bicycle pump or an air pump of some sort, or even an air compressor, to this fitting, and you use it just like you would a bike pump, and you add pressure and you keep checking it again until you get the reading that you want. In my particular case, I didn't need to add any air, so all I need to do at this point is to replace the cap on this. Screw this back on. Tighten that up, not too tight. Now next what we're going to do is undo what we started with. So this valve, we're going to close this because we don't want to drain any more water out of this fitting right here. And we're going to turn our well switch, the power, back on. As soon as we do that, you're going to notice that the pressure in this gauge immediately starts to go up. And if we've done this correctly, and again, my cut-in pressure was 40 and my cut-out pressure is 60. At least that's the design of it. So let's take a look here. And it should shut off when it reaches 60 psi if it's set up correctly. And what's shutting it off is actually this switch right here, and this I'll cover in another video. And it takes a little bit because this tank holds about, I think about 38 to 40 gallons of water. And if you just heard that click, that's the cut out pressure. So right now, the good news is that it's stopped pretty much right at 60, and the cut in pressure would be 40. So now that that's done, all we need to do as a last item is this shut-off valve that I had shut off. I'm going to open this back up to let the water go back into the house. We'll disconnect our hose from the drain, and everything should be back in operation. And now we know that the water pressure should work correctly. And if we have other problems with pressure, the biggest cause is this tank. So this is a critical item to check. We checked the pressure to make sure that it was 2 psi under what the cut-in pressure means. So that's really, in a shorter way of saying that, is the low pressure setting, which in my case was 40. So we know the tank was set to 38 psi. And at this point, we're actually done. So there are many components to a well. I have another video on here that explains it a bit more, but this at least explains how to check the pressure of this mysterious tank that everyone has that has a well. Yours might be a little bit smaller than this or even larger, but this is a critical item and it gets overlooked all the time. I actually know people that have had well pumps changed because of it. I know people that have had well pumps changed that did not need to have them changed because they were sold on this. So you can test this anytime. There's no harm in doing it. In fact, as I said earlier, you'll get rid of some sediment in your system. It's a good thing to check. I hope this video was helpful to you. If it was, I'd really appreciate it if you'd click on the thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel for more great videos. I have all kinds of useful information around plumbing and heating and lots of other topics. Thank you very much for watching.